Hello and welcome to Marlins After Dark, because of course no team keeps you up late at night like the Miami Marlins. My name is Sean Millerick. I'm back at long last from an extended hiatus, joined tonight by Jeremiah Geiger of Marlins 9, and we'll just kind of dive into the last week's action a little bit and dive into some other topics as well. But first I guess we got to get to tonight's margin here, which is a game just concluding a little while ago. Marlins fought at the Astros 6-5. No, but for that, Jeremiah, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Sean. Great to be back on the podcast. Great that you're recording again, and excited to talk some Marlins baseball as we're already almost halfway done with August, heading into the stretch. It's exciting.
Yeah, no, definitely a fun time to be watching, and feel like I just need to lead off. If I promise that was not me walking away for a while in just frustration at the horrific performance coming out of the All-Star break. Was on this pretty much 1 month road trip, and just so it worked out really well for my mental health to just not even during many of the crushing losses not even have internet signal for a lot of the travels, but. Yeah, back at home, back in the swing of things, recording and writing. But just in time for this past week's action, Marlins win 2 series against the Reds and the Yankees, and now split tonight. Get the win last night against the Astros, and defending World Series champs. You've got to be happy going into this series, just winning one. Probably, and they've done that, but tonight fallen 6-5 in a game that unfortunately kind of felt winnable at many points. Kind of gaffes galore, in this one, headlined by a big collision in left center field between Brian De La Cruz and J.S. Chisholm, both playing for the ball. And so it seemed to be maybe a couple questionable or at least much maligned on Twitter managerial decisions as well. Only able to follow the action on Twitter in this one and the Gamecast. Wasn't able to watch live because despite living 10 hours from Houston, I am technically in Texas, and the game is blacked out on my MLB TV package. I get Rockies games, so they're 8 hours away, and I'm an hour from New Mexico, where I'm at. But yeah, no Marlins Astros games on my feed. If MLB TV and Rob Manfred are listening, go to hell. Fix that, please.
Fix it.
But what were your thoughts tonight on? I'm sure you've either were watching yourself or at least kind of saw the highlights in the aftermath like I did.
It was a winnable game. You said it. It's after last night, kind of the excitement, I think, from the back-to-back home runs. I remember I was in a phone call and I had the game on, and Josh Bell hit his home run, just a no doubt tank, and I just started yelling. I'm like, "Oh, sorry, someone hit a home run." But to come back, right? To come back, you jump out to an early lead. Cueto's on the mound, pitches into the 6th inning, and just one bad pitch. AJ Puck gives up, center cut fastball. Tucker's a good hitter, and Astros are up 6-5, 1-run game. You figure the Marlins are going to have a chance to, put some more offense on the board with the way they've been swinging the bats as of late. But unfortunately, you just couldn't get it done. But, no harm, no foul. You're playing the Houston Astros, defending World Series champs, and you have an opportunity to win the series tomorrow. If you come out and play well, you can take the rubber match. So it's disappointing for tonight, but in the perspective of how the Marlins started the second half after the trade deadline and All-Star break, to be able to come in and compete against Houston, to take a series against the Yankees, to take a series against the Reds, I'm content right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you come into this series without your 2 at least most talented pitchers. Pitching 100%. In the series against honestly the best that the Astros have to offer, and Framber Valdez, Christian Javier, who, again, the Javier game is the one we're picking as the game the Marlins should win in this series. Christian Javier is who I picked to win the American League Cy Young in the beginning of the season, and with good reason. He's great. He just never really put it together this season to the extent that he wanted to, much like another pitcher for much of the year. We could,
Yeah.
that's much closer to our hearts. So, I mean, I'm certainly nervous about, tomorrow, but I was also nervous about the Marlins going into the Garrett Cole game, on Sunday.
Right.
Something about this team, we've been saying it all year. So, certainly, can't rule them out that they can pull something off tomorrow. But yeah, they got one in this series. It's kind of a let's not get swept, mentality against some of these teams. So I'll have a chance to pick that up. But this close game, like you said, just a couple of those decisions do kind of loom large in this one. Cueto, he's been solid, but it's just with that 1-run difference, so that misplay that led to a run, on the error, the putting Cueto in and almost immediately giving up a home run at that point. It's like maybe with the off day on Thursday, maybe you do go to the pen for 4 innings instead of 3 again, and then also the decision to pinch hit Avisal Garcia, in the 9th inning. There, I know there was some history with him versus Ryan Presley, but it was also years ago. That history. There was a different Avisal Garcia, and it makes you think. But in the grand scheme of things, there haven't been too many reasons this season to question Skip. Whereas, all we've done as Marlins fans the past several years is question everything, rightly or wrongly, that Don Mattingly did or some player did on the field. So you still just got to be happy that we're in this position to care this much about the outcome.
100%.
Game to game. So also some Marlins news today. So kind of move on to things that I could talk more authoritatively on, since again, thank you MLB TV. I was not watching live. The Marlins made a transaction today, signed a catcher to a minor league deal, a veteran catcher with some pop, with some playoff experience, to his name, to the roster to have in store just in case something goes wrong for the stretch run. But that catcher is Jorge Alfaro, the catcher who the Marlins went to great length and gave up considerable prospect capital, particularly if you ask Alex Carver, to move on from at the close of the 2021 season. What was your reaction to this news when you saw this morning that Jorge Alfaro is back in the Marlins organization?
I was shocked, to be honest. I tweeted out. I forgot who broke the news. I think it was Jordan McPherson. And I said, "Ain't no way." And I was like, "He is back." I'm not impressed with the move. I'm going to be honest, Sean. I don't think it is. I think Alfaro flamed out. I think, he was such a top prospect in the Rangers and the Phillies organization. Plus power all around, and it just never worked out for him. And it's unfortunate because he did have his moments with the Marlins. But you have to remember, this was a team when he was on Miami that is unrecognizable compared to today. Just really the dog days of the rebuild in the Kim Ng early era, if you will. So Alfaro goes to AAA, and you look at the rest of the catching depth, and by no means am I saying Jacob Stallings or Nick Fortes is the answer at backstop. They're not. Stallings has been awful. Fortes has been really bad at times, slightly better than Stallings, and to me that's a huge upgrade. But I wanted to mention this is Will Banfield. If you remember, he was drafted. It's going on 5 years. This is the Connor Scott draft. Will Banfield was the compensation pick, if I'm not wrong. The first round compensation, first or second round. I can't remember. But
that sounds right.
It was an early round pick. And Banfield comes in into the system and has struggled hitting. He was always known as a glove first backstop guy with a powerful arm, can throw out runners. Well, in Double-A, he's hitting 270. He's hitting 268 with 16 bombs, 61 RBIs. And he's a guy you look at, okay, now he's blocked in AAA. Paul McIntosh is sent down back to AA. So I don't really know where the Marlins are going organizationally if they're looking at internal options for the catching position, because Will Banfield's a guy, he's had such a breakout season. I want to see how he can continue to develop and get promoted to AAA moving into next year. I don't see the need for Alfaro.
The one thing I'll say, and agree that there's a reason that Alfaro was available. This will be if he puts on a Marlins uniform this season, it would be the third major league team he's played for in 2023. He's being passed around more than the balls he tried to catch.
That's a good one.
Here, but at the same time, I was joking about this on Twitter this morning, and wrote about it for Call of the Pen. And I think one thing that stands out is that he has some experience with the catching staff. I'll say that much. So this is someone who, if he does have to come up, like in the event of an injury, that this is a guy who, Sandy, Brax, they're not going to be sitting there thinking, who's this freaking guy? Necessarily.
Right.
He's caught them, before. So that's probably worth something. Another point that was I had not thought of, and I forget who brought it up on Twitter this morning. Someone commented, and I'll try to find it and give them credit on here in case they're one of my 4 listeners. But they made the observation that this could be his arm strength. Which got me thinking that with all the problems the Marlins have kind of had with the running game, of late, it's kind of reached breaking point, I think, for a lot of fans, and that probably includes a lot of Marlins front office personnel. That base runners are going crazy on the base paths, and Alfaro does have a strong arm. He's got some pop in his bat, and he's kind of got a cannon. Now, he has a significantly worse batting average than Jacob Stallings this season. Alfaro is hitting 146 this season. With 2 different teams, Stallings is at 188, Fortes is at 221. It'd be the worst case scenario if he had to play a game, but I'm not unsure this isn't a warning shot across the bow for those 2 catchers to kind of light a fire under them a little bit. And while I think it's unlikely, I think it's probably depth in case of emergency. At the same time, I don't know. That if there's another game where 4 or 5 stolen bases happen, that maybe somebody snaps up there in the Marlins offices and you use one of Fortes' options and just see if you could ride a hot 2 weeks or something.
Right.
Out of Alfaro. And if it works, cool. And if it doesn't, then you cut him. After 2 games of it not working and him going 0 for 8, 0 for 10 with a couple pass balls. So I think it's probably just in case, but I wouldn't be surprised either if he's in a Marlins uniform by the end of the month.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised either. And honestly, it can't get much worse than what we've had. Stallings has 12 RBIs all season. None of them can hit. They can't throw out a runner. And I think the Yankee series showed us that. That was just, it was abysmal. It was pathetic. You're a major league catcher. You gotta throw somebody out at some point. And all season, it's just been nothing. So, like you said, Alfaro's got a strong arm. At the end of the day, this is a problem to have when you're a competitive team. In 2019, this is oh, well, whatever. We're 57 and, 75 at this point or whatever it is. But Right now, the Marlins are holding a wild card spot with a month and a half to go. So every little move matters and will be scrutinized and really magnified under the lights of the media and fans alike. So it's a good problem.
Yeah, absolutely. To have to worry about it. And I guess partly in the catcher's defense, I'll say the running game issues, it's certainly been a 2-way street. Pitchers need to control the runners better as well. And it really appears that the Marlins don't have a starting pitcher that can do that. But of late, it's started to really tip in the catcher's direction. And that's something they've got to clean up. And I think just to final point on it before we move on to the next topic, I think this just further underscores that there's going to be massive turnover at catcher in 2024. I don't think Alfaro is is in danger of being that catcher
No.
by any means, but I I think there's zero chance that both Fortes and Stallings return in 2024, and I think it's even possible that neither one does. Fortes is probably cheap enough that he's returning, but there's going to be some change there, their position. But on a happier note with players, so back to that one win the Marlins got. At the front end of that back-to-back home run. That's the flashy part from yesterday. That's only happened one other time in Marlins history. So I think the last time was 1998, which I don't remember watching the game live, but when I saw the videos today of the highlights, I remember watching that Sports Center. At the time, was the funny thing, like the audio is like, I have heard this before, and had this vague memory of coming back after going out or something, and just like, oh wow, that happened. Good for the 1998 Marlins, doing that to McGuire's team. Because I think it was just watching highlights to see what McGuire or Sosa did, and it was like, oh cool, we hit home runs for once. Nice. But at the start of that game, Braxton Garrett, with another solid outing, for the Marlins, getting the job done. I think he only had one strikeout there, but 5 scoreless innings. And Braxton Garrett, who has arguably been, and he's only 0.1 WAR behind Jesus Luzardo, who by that metric technically has been the Marlins' second best starting pitcher this season. But we throw in everything else, some intangibles, the record, and you can make a pretty good case. It's been Garrett who's been the number 2, behind Sandy, and that's something that precisely no one saw coming. Heading into the 2023 season, particularly a 2023 season where the Marlins were as successful as they've been. And if I told you in April that Braxton Garrett's going to be the second best pitcher on the Marlins this year, you'd be shoveling dirt on the season. Maybe we have 45 wins right now. Maybe that's the case. But in a year where Luzardo's still been solid out there, and the Marlins are fighting for a wild card, Braxton Garrett has been great for the Marlins. If you do that thing where you take the worst starter, throw it out, and that's kind of cherry picking that you always hate to see. But if you take away that 11 earned run, just don't know what was wrong with them.
The Braves,
right? The Braves lineup. Then he's been one of the best pitchers in baseball. Do you think? So where is your head at with Braxton Garrett? Is that repeatable? Is this legit? And I guess it kind of gets me to wondering what's in store for him going into next season. He's just eminently controllable. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you go. I was just looking at his page yesterday. He's not even arbitration eligible until, I believe, either 2025 or 2026. Is when his first time arbitration comes up. Free agent in 2029. Like the Marlins have him for years, if they so choose. But that also makes him immensely valuable, not just to the Marlins, but to other teams as well. Do you think Braxton Garrett, this is legit enough that he should be in the Marlins rotation going forward and just considered a true starter? Do you think he's a trade chip? What do you think the future has in store for Garrett and the Marlins?
So I think Braxton Garrett is one of the most underrated pitchers in Major League Baseball. His consistency, for the Marlins, every time he goes out, it seems he's throwing 5-6 innings, 2 or less runs. I mean, he can pitch, and it's such a great story. First round pick, Tommy John surgery, people wrote him off. Well, Brax didn't write back, as Geno Smith said, for the Seahawks. But he comes in last year, and you saw he got a couple spot starts, and you saw glimpses of, hey, well, maybe this Braxton Garrett kid is making a rebound on his career. And then he comes into 2023 and just has been awesome. You mentioned against the Astros, 5 innings, didn't allow a run, 1 strikeout. And then you see outings against a couple months ago against the Pirates where he's striking out 14. He has good stuff. He knows how to pitch. You mentioned the control. Braxton Garrett is a legitimate major league starter. He's a legitimate piece in this rotation. I fully expect and want him to be pitching for the Marlins next season. And he's a huge key to the rest of this playoff push down the stretch. Every fifth day, he's going to get the ball. And how is he going to pitch? It's going to be consistent. And that's his MO. And we've seen him start to pitch a little deeper into ball games. I have nothing but great things to say about Braxton Garrett. Really one of my favorite Marlins of 2023.
Oh, without question. It's just amazing what he's done. I mean, if you mentioned like heading into the playoffs, if the Marlins make the playoffs, you kind of, your rotations, your conception of rotation kind of reshapes itself to really your top three guys. And there's a really good case to be made that maybe Braxton needs to be one of those three pitchers. They're particularly if you look at the innings reality with your Erie, is it even going to be an option to have Erie Perez pitch one of those 3 games? If it's not, then it's academic that it's Braxton Garrett, I guess, is going to be that third, that third pitcher. But between him and Luzardo, I mean, like, I don't know.
They're right there, neck and neck.
It's really right there. It kind of depends on the day what your answer is going to be. To that question. He's just earned so much trust, for what he's doing in this 2023, vacuum. It would be really hard to take the ball away from him in that situation. And with the control going forward, it's just that he's giving the Marlins some really exciting options for 2024 and beyond. Because if I were to ask you to name, the 5 best pitchers in the Marlins organization going into this year, he wouldn't be one of them. He wouldn't have made that list. If just on paper, assuming health, based on true talent and stuff, and stuff plus and all those measurements, I don't really know if he's making that list either. You've got to consider guys like Max Meyer. You got to consider Trevor Rogers, coming back. Is Edward Cabrera going to get his head out of his ass and, start to find the strike zone, consistently? Seems like he's done it the last couple, starts in AAA. If Edward Cabrera is on, Cabrera is a better pitcher, than him.
Right. But, talent wise.
So if all that to consider, and with other things to fix on the roster, that despite the depth issues they've had, the Marlins are probably gonna have to trade a pitcher again, next season if they want to fill some offensive holes. It's a very thin market for offensive talent. They're not getting Shohei, really, and it's very pitching heavy. All the other big names on there. So I think that gives the Marlins an opportunity to, many teams are going to be spending themselves silly getting those arms to move an arm to find a bat. And I'm really curious to see how it goes, because if you go inside the numbers, there's some reason to question what Brax is doing, like particularly his his ERA. It's solid. It's 3.91, and that's with that monstrosity start against the Braves, of course. But like his expected ERA is over 4.5. Just over. So there's some concern there. I think he probably has more value to the Marlins than to other teams, if that makes sense. But I'm just wondering if he keeps this going all through the year, that would buy the trust from the club that he should be our number 4 or number 5, starter. We should just commit to that. And then if that frees them up to move a flashier name, like an Edward Cabrera, like a Dax Fulton, maybe lower down to bring in that other offensive option, bring in that shortstop, bring in that catcher that might not otherwise be available on the market.
Well, what I'll say is I think going into next year, and you're looking at the rotation, who you got. I think, I'm not in the front office, but I would expect Yuri Perez to be a full 100%. He's in the rotation. Here we go. We're locked and loaded. I think you got to cut ties with Cueto. I think the Cueto experiment failed.
Oh God, totally.
He's gone. Yeah. But just to clarify that point, I think Cueto's 100% going to be gone. And you got to look at Rogers, right? Trevor Rogers hasn't pitched since the beginning of the season. Is Trevor Rogers? He struggled with injury his entire career. Is that a guy where the Marlins decide, it just didn't work out with this team, with this organization. How are we going to move him? Is his time expiring soon? So Braxton Garrett suddenly, you're looking at, you got Sandy, Jesus Luzardo, Yori Perez, and then Braxton Garrett. Like it's going to be a huge piece of the rotation for 2024 for sure.
My only thing with Trevor is that I think that what's looking like it's going to be total inactivity. Like I don't expect him to pitch in 2023.
I don't either.
He's just going
to no
work up, and so as a result of that, he hasn't been able to do anything. Like at least Edward Cabrera right now, even though he had some highs and lows this season in the majors, and was set down, he's able to rack up good stats for AAA ball club right now, and scouts are seeing that. Other teams could look at those numbers, and even if for somehow Cabrera isn't recalled, which I don't see happening, I'm sure he'll be back sometime in the next few weeks here, even though there were some issues with attitude, I think, behind his demotion. But even with but either way, those numbers would be compiled, and I think that makes him more attractive. I don't think the Marlins are just. I think they'd be selling super low on Trevor Rogers when there was some reason to believe that he was actually going to be better, this year, that he was going to rebound. Like he had such a solid spring, and his last outing before the injury, he put together a pretty strong showing. So I think he's a lock for that rotation. So it comes down to that fifth spot between Cabrera, between Garrett. Is Meyer ready and just ready to go? Or are they going to want to give him a couple, like a month or two in the minors to really lock things down before running them out there? But it's just he's making it interesting. I just did not think that he would be. Coming into the season, I think we're thinking, well, maybe Garrett's like a relief piece. Maybe they'll trade him for a bench bat, at some point during the year, and he's really changing the calculus on that. So it's cool to see for him. Since you mentioned Cueto, one other thing that I'm wondering is, again, he hasn't been terrible. Now he did give up, that home run. He should not have been put in that position, to do that. But these last few starts, we've been able to, there's base runners that he's allowed, to get there, but like either a run is scored on an error, inherited runners that he left on base have been given up by someone else pitching poorly. We expected this to be a disaster. We expected him to just repeat his one inning of work, many times. Between that and his performance in the minors was just making you think you can't even risk putting him out there on the field. And he's been probably about as good or bad, as most other teams' fifth starter, honestly, at this point in the year in this current pitching environment. And I'm just wondering that one thing that the Marlins have taken, and I think justifiably, some flack for not getting that veteran starting pitcher here at the trade deadline. Personally, I'm just all in on 2023. If some team is asking for multiple top 5 prospects for another veteran arm, then screw it. You need to make the playoffs and get fans back, but that's by the by. Do you think that Cueto? Do you think that the front office thought that Cueto was that guy? Do you think that, I think he had a couple, solid enough, 5-6 inning performances going into the final days of the deadline to his ledger? Do you think that the Marlins were thinking that we just have it? Cueto is that veteran starter people are clamoring for to eat up innings? Or do you think that they just weren't willing to pay the price that it would have cost to get Lorenzen or Montgomery or those other names?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, if I had to guess. With the price tags at the deadline, as teams are becoming more desperate, pitching is always something that is wanted, starting pitching. It's one of those, positions where there's always going to be a need for it. Players go down, players get injured, and the Marlins were they were the same as every other team. Unfortunately, they didn't get a starting pitcher at the deadline, but they did get Berger and Bell, who have been huge. And if you had to ask me, would I rather have added Berger or Bell or a starting pitcher, honestly, I would say the combination of those two. Cueto has eaten up innings, and his ERA is not good. It's over 5.5 after today, but at the same time, you look at the postseason, and you got all these teams rushing for that final wild card. There's weaknesses in every roster, and Cueto is not getting blown up every time he's going out. He's giving you a chance to win the game. And honestly, that's more than I could have asked for if you had asked me this back in June. So I think Cueto is going to continue pitching, obviously, but I think Edward Cabrera is waiting in the wings. I think he's going to figure it out. I think a dark horse, just a little wild card to throw in there, Max Meyer, who's recovered from Tommy John, absolute flamethrower. He's sitting in there. So there's going to be a lot of decisions, but I'm not extremely upset you don't trade for a starting pitcher because, Cueto's been that prototypical fifth starter, 5 innings, 3-4 earned runs. Like, the offense goes off, you get a win. The offense doesn't, and you lose 4-2. It's just one of those back end guys.
Yeah, I agree with you that it's both. I think that they probably were just not in love with the offers. So I think they probably could have acquired all of these players, but it definitely would have just resulted in the complete decimation of the farm system. And I imagine ultimately that's in the best interest of the club long term, that they did not choose to go that route. In doing so, it'll be interesting with Cueto down the stretch with those players that you mentioned. They can't send him down. If he's off the 20, if he's off the 26 man, then he's just off. Then they're just eating that money and he's cut. With their
right.
Not, and they can send him back down unless there's an injury, to him, which we don't want for him either, obviously. But I think it would. I'd have been curious to see the back in time scenario where if he had come up in those couple games and had done what we all expected him to do, and if he had given up 8 runs in one game, 7 in another, and done so before the Marlins got through the batting order, one time on their side of the matchup, then maybe then you do go and just blow it up for Montgomery or Flaherty or Lorenzen or anyone other warm body out there. But but again, at the end of the day, he hasn't been terrible. We were expecting him to make us say, "Where's Devin Smeltzer?" And he's been.
And that's what I will say is, you look at Cueto and what he's done after the All-Star break, after the trade deadline, coming back into the rotation, and you check Twitter and you see different opinions. Oh, Cueto, screws it up again, and I'm like, he didn't really lose it. He didn't, give you. Sandy Alcantara, gem, but he didn't lose you the game. You have opportunities to win. What more do you really want from somebody that shouldn't be pitching in the rotation? Like, if you think about it, if everything goes well, Eddie Cabrera is still in the rotation. He doesn't need to be sent to AAA. Trevor Rogers is healthy. So you look at a few years ago, in the exact same situation, if Cabrera's sent down, if Rogers is hurt, who's the spot guy? Dan Castano, Devin Smeltzer, like you mentioned,
Hey, I like Castano.
I like Castano, but with all due respect,
don't besmirch the Italian stallion.
The Italian stallion. It's just, I think Cueto, you gotta drive the car until all the gas runs out. Like, he's running on fumes. We all know that. I think Johnny Cueto knows that. And honestly, until he gets blown up, whatever. Like, hopefully you get a chance to win a game. Each win matters at this point.
Oh no, absolutely. If yeah, anytime Cueto or Avi, honestly, too, take the field, I'm just thinking
Ugh.
of, I'm thinking of Brad Pitt in Moneyball, just talking to the guy playing David Justice, and just like, I'm going to squeeze every last bit of baseball you've got left. That's what I want out of you, and that's what's happening to these
I
two
think
young
Skip
ones.
tried that today with pinch hitting for Stallings
Yeah,
instead of Yuli.
yep, yep. He tried it with Avi, and So what I'm hoping happen is that I think Bruce Sherman's been in attendance for a bunch of these games. I don't know if he was there tonight behind the plate, but I'm hoping that if you do it in front of Bruce Sherman and he has the live in person experience of being that angry, that maybe he'll just sign off after the game on
I
just
think Bruce will personally call Skip
lighting
and
the 40
say,
million on fire and
yeah,
cutting him. Um, or
I understand now. This is bad.
yeah, so Kim and Skip could be playing chess with that, while others are playing checkers to get Avi off the roster. But we'll see on that. All right, sure. Let's we're having fun here. Let's do one more topic here. Just want to kind of wrap with where are you at on Jazz at this
Ooh.
time of the year, and in terms of, I guess, going into next season, how, I'm just gonna say it. How untouchable is Jazz Chisholm? Do you think in the eyes of the Miami Marlins? Because the way I'm looking at it is that we still don't know, as we as the Marlins fans base, the Marlins organization, like, so can they really know exactly what they have in him due to, you've had all these health injuries. That's a good phrase. These injuries, this spotty health record that it's just reduces playing time. That this is 2 years now where you wanted the chance to see if he's the guy, if he is a superstar, and every bit the way that is worth a market like the Miami Marlins paying him, a superstar salary, signing into that long-term big extension, whatever it is that he is going to be worth, and like you want them to know, and in my estimation, they don't. They don't know that, despite him being on the cover of MLB The Show and everything. Coming into the year, there were so many questions about his ability to play the position, and even despite tonight, that instance, like we were expecting that to happen every game, and it hasn't. He's been a capable center fielder overall, and more often than not. But do you think that it still helps the skill? He might not have it. Do you think he's untouchable? Do you think he is absolutely back with the Marlins in 2024, regardless of what happens the rest of the season? Or do you think that there is a scenario where the Marlins would consider moving Jazz for another player?
Well, we all love Jazz. First and foremost, he brings an energy every day, every night to the clubhouse, to the team that really is unmatched, unparalleled in recent years that we've seen. And he is such a spark plug when he's in the lineup. He's that catalyst that just gets things going. Had a triple today.
He's so fun
But
to watch.
he makes baseball fun, and he's every time he's up, you got to watch. Because you don't know what he's gonna do. But the question is, how many times is he up to bat in a season? And you mentioned his health a skill. Well, when you have 1 year, 2 years, 3 years in a row of just injuries and consistently lingering problems, then you have to wonder, is this a guy we're going to build around and make an offer, a contract extension that is going to, really put a damper on the Marlins books? I don't think he's untouchable. I don't think he's untouchable at all. I think if the Marlins get a good offer, if somebody reaches out to them, I wouldn't shop Jazz. But if a team reaches out and says, "Hey, we love this Jazz Chisholm kid. Let's make a deal here," and they're willing to overpay in terms of young major league talent, I'm not doing no more prospects. I'm not doing another Lewis Brinson, Monty Harrison. I can't do it. Jazz has proven he's got the talent. But if there's a clear overpay, I'd consider it. I honestly would. And that is a hard thing because Jazz is one of my favorite players on the entire team. Personality wise, the swagger he brings, but he can't stay healthy. I don't think you can, in good conscience and as an organization, say, I'm going to offer him a 9-year, $100 million deal or whatever when he can't stay healthy. You just can't.
So you say you're done with prospects. So I think I know the answer to the question I was going to ask. It's one like pairing of players that I was, kicking around in my head when I thought of this situation was, and I'm not, a prospect guy. Certainly not during the season in the playoff chase. I'm not a prospect guy. And in November, I'll be a little better at it. But I saw like I think there's 4 shortstops that are projected to make their debuts in 2024 in the MLB top 20. And off the top of my head, I can tell you none of their names, but 4 of the top 20 prospects in Major League Baseball right now are shortstops that are knocking on the door. If you had to choose between the 2024 Miami Marlins having Jazz Chisholm on the roster or one of those shortstops and Kevin Kiermaier, who's really good center fielder, going to be a free agent next year. So the Marlins just say they just dropped he made $8 million this year. They just dropped like $12 million bag, for Kevin Kiermaier, and got one of those shortstops in a Jazz trade. If someone else just wanted to take the sexy, exciting, super marketable, talent Chisholm and give the Marlins an answer at shortstop, and if they signed the best center fielder in free agency, what's the better team?
Honestly, there's the only player, and this would never happen, but one of the prospects I would trade Jazz for, and it would be Jackson Holiday from the Orioles as a shortstop. He's going to be a superstar. Like, he is going to be a superstar. He reminds me of Bobby Witt Jr., who on the Royals, you just knew from day one he was going to be a star. But going into next year, am I willing to take that chance with the competitive window that has opened up? I would keep Jazz. I really would. I think Jazz offers you that star, hitter in the lineup that is really hard to find in this day and age if you're not the Atlanta Braves. So I would keep Jazz. I think is he untouchable? Like I said, I don't think he is, but when it comes down to a top 20 shortstop that might or might not pan out, we know what Jazz can do. Just got to have the clean bill of health.
Yeah, I think at least for one more year here, I think he probably is untouchable, and I think it's for 2 reasons. As you say, at the competitive window, that's part of it. He is here now, but but I also kind of think his with the injuries, like his value is a little down. I think they'd be selling a little low. I feel that.
I agree.
I feel the hypothetical out there, but I don't think they can get one of those players for Jazz. I mean, if they can, then. But he's such a popular player. Again, he's so much fun to watch. I think the other reason is that I think that the perception amongst the fan base as a whole, and even the more casual fan especially would be that if the Marlins did trade Jazz Chisholm, I think the reaction would be, F it, here go the Marlins again. It's just like
it would be hard.
It's just like with Stanton. It's just like with Hanley.
Yep.
They're just tearing it down. Same with Marlins. Same shit, different day. And we're at late night. But the thing is that I think unlike those other cases, I think like the Marlins are kind of trapped in the fact that is the perception, but is he really worth as much uproar and acrimony as was the case when the Marlins traded Hanley and traded Stanton, and you go down the list of others, and Miguel Cabrera, and starters, right. Because Jazz might be the 4th best player on the team, with there in terms, you count pitchers for this, like Arias is, what Arias has been this year. I think he's a better baseball player right now. I think Sandy is, is untouchable. You can't move Yuri. So it's like I think he's the 4th best player, right now. And that's so if there was a chance to significantly improve, but still, he brings a lot of intangibles to the table. He's a lot of fun. I don't think they're moving him, but just it's something I've kind of been wondering about all year, or at least since the second injury, hit certainly, and we're looking at another lost season. Is just he's making it interesting, and he's kind of keeping the Marlins in neutral in some ways from being able to make a long-term commit decision or not. But at the end of the day, they don't have to. He's got years of team control left under chief control. And there's this competitive window that you talked about until this is a 2026 problem, and the Marlins have some fun years ahead of them. Hopefully, starting with it. Problem for future Kim to figure that out. And hopefully that starts with a playoff chase down to the stretch tonight. Jeremiah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Where could we find you if we're looking for what you've got going on the interwebs?
So Marlins 9, Roman numerals IX. I'm sure if you've watched Sean's podcast, you've probably heard mine. I come on here a lot. I have Sean on my podcast a lot. Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your pods. Marlins 9. Got to record soon. I definitely got to record soon. Been busy, but it's exciting times. And, I don't think I've been this excited about a Marlins team and felt this good since 2016. When Andrew Kashner and Fernando Rodney kind of screwed it up for us. But, it's awesome to talk some baseball. That was a really fun pod, Sean. So thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. And we'll catch you next week on Marlins After Dark, and go fish.
Go fish.